So most people know me as the blue-haired recruiter. Hair is actually blue. My name's Maddie in real life. I am the VP of People and Culture at Sourced Craft Cocktails here in Austin, Texas. I like cocktails, but I also am super passionate about diversity and inclusion and culture and just the ability to be really human at work. And so that's a lot of what I focus my work around, plus cocktails. Yeah, so I have like my own feelings around unconscious bias trainings. They feel very like checking the box to me, and like being able to unpack your own biases and get that vulnerable is not something you typically want to do in like a group of random people that you work with.
Yeah.
And you're also not having a one-on-one conversation with a trainer. So it feels like you're being talked at. No one really comes away with memorable experiences when they're being talked at. So for example, if I were to sit down with a hiring manager and say, hey, you said to someone in an interview that you were really shocked by how articulate they were, which is something that, you know, Black women hear all the time.
Is it?
That makes them, oh yeah, 100%. Like, oh my God, you're so well spoken. I'm shocked.
You're you know, rightly angry on some of your posts and impassioned, but you know, being an outspoken advocate of women's and minority rights, being a Black woman in Trump's America, you know, let's call it what it is. You must be getting some heat, you know, online. Do you get people coming in and giving you shit when they see something you posted?
All the time, like tons of, you know, people who call me a racist or all of this stuff. And I think again, it's a lot to unpack, because if you have to unpack white supremacy and privilege, then you have to realize that at some point you've probably played some part in it, which is fine, and to own that, because I think, you know, even as a Black woman, like I have a lot of privilege as well, because I have the privilege of being able to speak up. I have the privilege of being employed right now during COVID. I have the privilege of shopping for a home in the midst of a pandemic. Like I also have privilege. Privilege is not reserved for like a certain category of people. So a Black man in February was shot.
Yes, the jogger.
Georgia. Yep.
Yeah.
He was jogging. And so it's obviously a very uncomfortable conversation to have, because the lines are literally black and white. And so you have this group of people who are like, oh, well, they were just like defending themselves. It's like the man was running, like he was running. And there's, you know, this second argument that he went into a construction site. But like, even if he went onto a construction site, at maximum, it would be a trespassing charge. And like, that's not anything that someone should lose their life over.
Yeah.
I'm pretty skeptical of that whole message anyway. Like, I think he was out for a run. Yeah. And I think they felt threatened by the fact that he was a Black man. Yeah. But it's an uncomfortable conversation to have. And I've had the conversation on LinkedIn, and people, despite like how traumatic and how upsetting it is to people of color, to me, to Black men who it could have been them, people still feel the need to be like, well, it happens to white people too, but it's like not a trauma competition.
If that was if you put that situation through a negative, and you had a white guy running and then two Black guys shoot him, those guys are going to prison. You know, they're going to prison.
They wouldn't have made it in alive.
Their feet don't
in the US, they wouldn't have made it to alive.
Their feet don't touch the ground getting to prison. And somehow there's this sort of, the fact that it's even open to discussion or debate, I find completely baffling. I've broken the seal now on being political on LinkedIn, so I'm just going to go with the flow. My original goal was I'll never be political on LinkedIn. That lasted about 2 weeks, so that's out the window now. But like looking, I'm going to offend 50% of my American viewers here. Hopefully less by November. But I look at Trump as president of the United States, and it's just like an episode of Black Mirror. It's just like some bizarre parody world where a man with seemingly no transferable skills, no redeeming characteristics, no empathy, is running the most powerful country in the world and saying these outrageous things, just the things that come out of the guy's mouth, and yet his supporters don't get it. They don't see it. I don't understand. And it must be doubly maddening for you, because it's, you know, to a lesser extent, we saw it over here with certain behaviours, but Trump being president gives a mandate to bigotry, doesn't it? It basically says, you're a bigot, that's okay, here's the presidential seal of approval.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that is, you know, when you hear the way he talks to people or the things he says to people, like very, very recently in an interview, an Asian woman had asked him some questions about the pandemic, and he was like, why don't you go ask China?
I saw that.
Like, And it's like watching something that it's not real. Like I feel like I'm living in like a simulation or something.
Yeah.
Like we're living in a Sims game, and whoever was running the ship walked away.
They've gone
like, we're just all we're fending for ourselves.
The other thing, we were just talking about the protests and stuff in the States, and I saw that some armed protesters marched into was it in Washington? They marched into the houses, like the council offices or whatever, the offices.
Michigan, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, Michigan's not so happy with their rules.
Yeah, and then the president said, to the governor, you should have a chat with them and maybe meet them halfway, and then I'm sure they'll go home. It's like, is that really the message you want to send to your populace? Arm yourself, storm a municipal building, and we'll give you what you want? That seems a dangerous precedent to set to me.
Yep, 100%. But I mean, it's also like when this was first happening and he didn't want to give ventilators to governors that weren't like kissing his ass. But I have tons of people in the people community who I really look up to, who I've had, the ability to bounce ideas off of, who I've been able to just like, when I want to scream into the void because everything is just like screwed up, who have been there to listen to me scream into the void.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to have that person, but it's also really important to have them for when you are faking it. And they can call you on that to be like, this is not you. This is not who you are. This is not what you deserve. What are you doing?
Yeah. You can swear, by the way. Like, this is going out to mainly British people. We swear all the time. So if you want to drop an F-bomb, crack on.
I played soccer growing up. I'm half Portuguese. And so, like, I basically got a soccer ball the second I could walk. And when I turned, like, probably 12, my mom was like, you're going to go play on an all-boys team because they're going to take you seriously. You're going to learn to, like, be aggressive. You're not going to learn to, like, dance around the ball. Like, you're just going to go be aggressive. And that was like her thing. So then it was like every time I got on the field, parents were like, oh my God, she's so rough. She's so scary. But like my mom did the right thing because I wasn't ever scared of a single man on earth.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable talking about it, then that's absolutely fine. But you mentioned before this call, and you mentioned earlier on the call that you were in an abusive relationship when you were younger, and you actually shared a link with me to a video that you'd made during an incident, and it was shocking, to say the least, to me. And I think one of the many horrible side effects of this kind of lockdown and the situation we're in is that women that are in that sort of environment now, domestic abuse is getting worse because they've got nowhere to go. They can't walk out, they can't, and they can't get away from that explosive situation. So, how did that change your outlook on life? Because you said that you mentioned that you completely changed the way you deal with yourself and deal with relationships, but how? Like, that's a huge thing to pick yourself up from.
And well, I think it's like, so when they tell you like hindsight is 20/20, hindsight is 20/20 for sure. And so he and I were together from the time I was 21 till about 25.
Yeah.
And I remember I had this like come to Jesus moment. I'm an atheist, but that was like the only term I could think of, where I was like, if I don't leave, like I'm not going to leave alive. And so I had locked him out of our apartment. And I remember I was standing in my bathroom, brushing my teeth. And I remember literally seeing him coming in through the window and being like, I'm fucked. Like, that was all I thought was I was on the phone with my friend and I was like, I'm fucked. I gotta go. And so I just had this moment, like after that I was like, I'm not gonna make it out alive. I remember he came in, he beat the snot out of me. I called the cops and they were like, well, he's not here now. And I was like, obviously. Like, I called the cops. He's not going to stay. And they were like, well, we can't do anything if he's not here. And I was like, this is bad. So I waited until he was out, like, on a date with some other girl. And I literally packed enough clothes and my 2 dogs and rented a car, left the car I had been driving, and drove all the way home to Rhode Island in 29 hours and didn't stop. Like, I didn't stop until I hit my mom's driveway. But it was like, in that relationship, not only was like, I can pinpoint so many places where I just like wasn't myself. Like, one, he wanted a housewife. He wanted dinner cooked every night, his lunch packed every day. Like,
Matt, look, Matt, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I think I love the stuff you're putting out on LinkedIn, and yeah, I think it's brilliant that there are voices that are prepared to do something worthwhile. So really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. I had a good time chatting.
Lovely. Thanks, Madison.
Bye.